One.
Okay, in this video, we're gonna start figuring out our AWS bucket. AWS S3 bucket. Just a place where you can store files. And you can get a year for free if you sign up for AWS services. So you can do all this stuff in this video for free. And the site is notoriously hard to get around, but I'll try to make it as easy as possible. So you want to have an S3 bucket. First thing you actually want to do is go to IAM. You've already created a user that accesses your whole account, but similar to how MLab has a user for each database, we're gonna create a user just to access this S3 bucket. So you're gonna go to users and add a user, come up with a username, and you want to give the user programmatic access so it can use the SDK. In permissions, this is the one you want. You want Amazon S3 full access. Normally there's a longer list here. And just search for S3, but you want Amazon S3 full access. Rather, you might have to pick from a bigger drop-down list. I'm not sure why mine's doing that, but all good. And once you have that AWS S3 access, create a user, and here you're going to have one chance to access this access key ID and the secret. Now, and you can even download the file that has those, but you're never going to be able to see this secret again. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to delete this user. But you're going to want to save both of those things. They're both very important. And in order to use the SDK, you have to get those credentials into your file. And they give you, I'm going to give you this link, and you can pick how you want to use those credentials. One of them is if you're using another service called EC2, which is kind of like a hosting service they have for web applications, but I'm not very familiar with that, and I've never used it. What I do is I load from a shared file credentials from, I make this directory with this file in it. But you can also use environment variables or JSON. So just to show you what I do, I copy this and I create that file in my home directory, .aws, and then I create the credentials file because I'm a Linux user. And if you're a Windows user, you do that. But you can also use environment variables or a JSON file. So there's multiple ways to do it. And you just have to pick the way that you like the best. So what I do, if you're using Cloud9, I go to my home, and then I create this AWS folder with the credentials, just like it says on the site. But you can do it with environment variables or a JSON file. It doesn't really matter, I guess, as long as you get the credentials in there. And the system will automatically pick up the credentials. All right, so the next thing is you want to make sure you npm install AWS SDK. So npm install AWS SDK. So install that, and then in our video schema, I'm going to add a couple mutations. Okay, the first mutation is S3 sign. So what we have to do is get a signature, a signed URL. Basically, they're going to send us. We're going to actually request a URL that we can then send back to Amazon. It's pretty complicated. We can't just send the file. We have to send the request and then send the file. So first we have to get the signature, and for that we send a file name and a file type, and we're going to get an S3 payload, which is a request URL. That's the URL that we have to send in to Amazon to upload our video. And then we have the video URL, and that's going to be the URL of the video where we can access the video so we can play it in our application. And the second mutation is where we actually create our video and save the link to our database along with other information we want about the video, and that's going to return a video. So I'm using an input called video input. This is another thing. It's not a type, it's an input. Rather than writing 4 different things out for variables here, put them all into one variable called an input. So I have to put a title, the description, the poster, and the URL all into there. And then in our resolvers here, I bring in the SDK and the export default, and we're going to do we don't have any queries, so we're just going to do a mutation. Here's the S3 sign. It's an async function of root, and then destructure the arguments, file name and file type, and the context. And say S3 is a new AWS.capital S3, and signature version 4, and then a region. Now, when you sign up for Amazon, you get a region. I happen to be US West 1. You may be US East 2, or not even in the US. And I'm going to have a bucket name. I'm going to call it, I just changed the bucket name to, it's going to be YTC tutorial. You can name it whatever you want as long as it's an available name, which you can check when you create it in Amazon. And then you have params. The bucket is our bucket that we just created. The key is the file name. 60-second expiration time from when we get the URL. We want to be very secure with it, so in 60 seconds, it's not going to be any good anymore. This URL is not just going to be floating around for anyone to use. We want it used by our app, and we want it used right away. Content type is the file type we send in, and ACL is called public read. That means the public will be able to access these files, which we want. We want read. So the request URL is, we're going to await s3.getSign URL. That's a function on our S3 SDK, and we're passing in put object and our params. And then our video URL is going to end up being this right here, HTTPS, the bucket name .s3.amazonaws.com and / the file name, which we create on the front end later. And then this returns the payload of a request URL and video URL. And pretty similar for the create video, except we have our input and we're extracting our ID off our user from our JWT token. And we get all those inputs or variables out of input, and then we just create a new video with all those inputs. Then we save our video. So video.save, that automatically saves it to our video document, but then we're also going to save it, just the ID, to our user document using this find one update with a special $ push command and options. And then this is going to save it.